Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Well, good evening and welcome to inFocus. We're glad that you've joined us for the broadcast this evening as we talk about the topic of education. Now, friends, many of you are watching this in Milwaukee and many of you outside in other districts as well, but many were shocked when Milwaukee Public Schools and the voters passed a $250 million referendum in the city. Other school districts around southeast Wisconsin and really throughout the state as a whole also passing massive tax increases here for property taxpayers. And wonders as to how much money is enough, especially when you consider the lack of proficiency that is taking place within our public education system. Matter of fact, the more money that goes in, usually the proficiency levels are going down. We're going to delve into those issues tonight. It's our privilege to have with us Bill Osmulski, who is the news director for the MacIver News Service. And Bill, so good to have you with us here tonight.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, this is a topic, we've been covering education, being, a watchdog for this for, 15 years. 15 years MacIver's been around.
Well, where would you say the public is on this issue? Are they informed as to what's really happening within our education system?
Either, I think there's a lot of naivety when it comes to public education. You get a lot of the controversies about it piecemeal, so they don't really have the impact. You don't realize how controversial public education is when you hear about a dirty textbook here or, a school fight over there.
Right.
We're going to obviously unpack that tonight and let them have it all at once.
Right. And there's a lot. And there's a number of controversies that are going on right now within the educational system, one of which has to do with the literacy program. Even how do we read? How do we learn to read?
Yeah, and this one, this is one where the state legislature passed a bill to establish a new literacy program in the Department of Public Instruction, and it is needed. 3 out of 5 kids can't read at grade level in this state. 3 out of every 5. And so they wrote this bill, sent it off to the governor. He used his line item veto to say, whatever money you put in this program, DPI can spend on whatever they want, not just literacy. Now there's a problem with that, and it's the state constitution.
Right.
The governor can only use his line item veto when there's money in a bill. There was no money in this bill. It was just to establish the program. So now the legislature's suing them. So yes, you have that's our first controversy. You reminded me of another lawsuit that's in place for a similar thing where the governor did some creative, we call it the Frankenstein veto or the Vanna White veto. Voters in the state 15 years ago actually made that part of the state constitution, that governors cannot do that. You cannot just cross off letters or digits and create whole new meanings or increase spending. And Governor Evers doesn't care. He did that anyway. He increased property taxes. This isn't the state's coffers giving more money to school districts every year. It's school districts' ability to raise your property taxes every single year more than they would otherwise for the next 400 years.
So where is the roadblock for him doing this? I mean, who is there to stand up against the governor and take this action to court?
Well, the law, the legislature gets to sue him. They get to take that to the branch of government that gets to interpret the Constitution, which is the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and we all know the court is more on the governor's side these days than it's not.
Right, which just underscores, and I know we're going to be in education, the election we've got coming up in the spring of 2025 is very, very critical as it relates to the Supreme Court.
That's right, because right now there's a liberal majority on the state Supreme Court. Next year, conservatives have the opportunity to take it back. And, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, indeed. Referendums is another big issue.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention that, the number of referendums in the state are increasing. Well, yeah, they are. I'll admit that, but I don't, there's people who will say, oh, it's because our school education system, our funding education system is broken. I don't think that's it. I would argue that schools are terrible at managing their budgets and voters keep approving them. So as long as the voters keep saying yes, you're going to keep on doing it. If you're the Milwaukee Public Schools, why wouldn't you ask for $250 million if you thought you could get it?
Right, and they did.
Yeah.
And on this note, many may not realize that there's a lot of waste that is going on. I know of people who've worked within school districts who said they're throwing away all these desks or all this furniture. Why? Because, well, we have to spend the money that we have in our budget or we're going to lose it. So many things are just very wasteful as far as good solid equipment.
Yeah, and so, yeah, in terms of like contracts and how this money is spent, that is an area that is ripe for more research. It's something that, at McIver, we're always trying to get into, encourage others to look into it. But, just real quick, so we get in the meat of this, when your school district has a referendum, they say, hey, this money is, we're going to spend this money on that. There's nothing that makes them spend the money on that once the referendum's passed. They spend that on whatever they want.
So that's not binding that they have to adhere to those things.
I was like I said before the show, I mean, my school district 5 years ago passed a referendum to give teachers raises, and they spent it on the bleachers for the football stadium. So there's no bean counters at the state government saying, hey, Milwaukee Public Schools, you said that you'd be spending some of this referendum money on IT costs, and you didn't do, let's see the receipts. That doesn't happen.
Historically, what is the purpose of public education?
So I would say that Americans believe that we can't have a functioning democracy without a strong education system. I think for me, when I think of that, I would say that the purpose of education, not necessarily just public education, but it's to enable citizens to become productive members of society. And because we're a democracy, it's also to have informed voters. And the Department of Public Instruction, if you go to their website, you go to the, it's usually the budget request is actually where they'll say what their mission statement is. It's about a page long, it's rambling, it's all over the place, but in general, it kind of fits those themes. The state superintendent actually says it's to prepare every child for college or a career.
Okay. But proficiency is so important for young people. I mean, to be able to read, to be able to write, to be able to function through life with these, to be an informed society. How else do we hold our government accountable if we can't even read the documents they're producing?
Yeah, so I mean, that's part of why public education has risen to where it's at right now.
We were talking about costs just a bit ago, too. How much should it cost to educate a child?
Yeah, that's the question. I don't even want to say the $1 million question because it's so hard to actually get a figure out of anyone. Ask a politician, ask any public school advocate, how much money do you need to educate a child? How much would it cost to get every child to get a 100% rate for a 100% proficiency rate across the state? What can tell us that number? You'll never get it. The answer is always more than you're giving us.
Right.
And then along with that too, I mean, I'm really, walking dangerous territory here, but how much should teachers make? Because we're always told they're underpaid. How much do you want? Give us the number. I want to know what that number is, because the answer is always just more than we're getting. I want to know. But yeah, in terms of what does it cost? What are we currently paying to educate children in the public school system? That's not as easy or as straightforward to answer as you might think, because there are multiple sources of revenue. You got state aids, you got different types of state aids, you got federal sources, you got property taxes, you got program revenue, you got all these different streams of revenue. And if you ask the school districts, how much money, what's your revenue? They'll never tell you the complete picture. A lot of times they'll just tell you what the revenue limits are, which is just one type of state aid plus property taxes. That's just a fraction of what they actually get. So I will tell you, just in terms of the state aid, because that's always a big one, is, well, we never, the state's always cutting the school district short.
We're told.
We're told. So for the past 4 budgets, the legislature has said we have made an historic investment in public education. And they aren't lying. This past budget, they increased DPI's budget by 10%. Never enough. Governor Evers obviously did his 400-year veto to increase that. But
and that was really a poke in the eye to the Republican Party, wasn't it? I mean, because here they had increased it, and were perhaps more generous than they have been in recent budgets, and then to have this kind of Vanna White veto.
Exactly, and again, remember, the state is giving the public education system $15.5 billion for this 2-year budget. that doesn't include what Wisconsin's public schools or what the property taxes are. You know, we're at another $5.8 billion in property taxes just this year. And even then, that's still a fraction. I'll tell you that, you know, real quick before I unveil this figure. Actually, if we could bring up that chart, 5.0, this is what, if you go to DPI's website, and that's where I try to get most of my numbers from, because official source, get it straight out of the horse's mouth. If you take all of the revenue that we give to Wisconsin's K-12 public schools, you'll see that this, or the last time this is updated, so 2022, $14 billion for statewide. Now, if we could jump to 5.2, this is what enrollment looks like. So that's $14 billion for about 820,000 students.
More money for less students.
More money, less students. Always, yeah. So that's that's where we're at. And then so this all, if you do the math, it comes out to $16,800 per year per student.
And is that all funds combined?
That's everything I showed there. So, and that's
Okay.
that, you know, that includes referendums, school lunch program, everything. That's $16,800 on average. Now, there's some districts where it's getting close to $40,000 per student, but just for context, though, the average private elementary school tuition in Wisconsin is $4,500. The average high school private tuition is $9,400. So a fraction of what these public schools are getting, and you know, we'll talk about performance here in a minute, but I think you get a lot more bang for your buck there.
Yeah. So what are we getting for this money right now?
Exactly. Real quick, I want to touch real quick on teachers. You know, I brought that up. You know, what do teachers make? Chart 5.1. This according to DPI, the average teacher's income in Wisconsin is $81,000. Now, Federal Reserve, who tracks what the median family income is in Wisconsin, $77,330. So the average teacher in this state makes more in 9 months than the typical family makes all year long.
Right. Because there's summers that are generally off, plus weeks of vacation, days off throughout the school year.
And I mean, I'll admit too that $81,000, I know that's an incomplete number, because I know that, say, sports income, that usually doesn't go into the teachers. It doesn't go on the books. So anyway,
but we're told that's not enough still. I mean, and that's why and Act 10 is to blame. We're told, because Act 10 was passed.
Yeah, and
we have teacher shortages and people who want to come work here.
Exactly. And I mean, I understand that. You know, how much money you make, is it enough, is it not enough? That's really a subjective thing. I just try to get the context of this is what it is compared to the typical family in the state. But you know, also, you know, that prompts the question: how much do you want? Well, you'll never get that number.
A little bit more.
Yeah, always more.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you asked, what are we getting for that cost?
Right.
Well, let's start with what the state thinks that we're getting for that cost, because large organizations, they develop goals and metrics to determine, you know, whether they're accomplishing their goals. And DPI picks its goals and metrics, how they pick their goals and their metrics. It says a lot about, you know, how unserious it is about academic achievement. Now they've got, I mentioned earlier, the budget request. Every 2 years, every agency needs to give a request to the governor on how much money they want in the next budget. That's where they state, they put in their mission statement, they say what their agency goals are, and how they plan to track those goals, what their metrics are. So in DPI's latest budget request, they listed 2 measurable goals, and you know, I'll summarize it here, but it's good teachers and good results. Those are their 2 measurable goals. And they've got 3 metrics that they use to assess whether they're meeting those goals or not. And that's on chart 6.0. I love this chart. These are the 3 metrics that DPI uses to determine whether or not it's being successful for its agency's mission. One is the number of 1-year licenses issued. That's the emergency licenses issued. You can see it sets a goal for itself, and then it tells you its actual how many it actually did. So we've got number of 1-year licenses issued, number of times the public has accessed its website, and the number of times educators have accessed its website. doesn't really seem to get to producing college and career-ready students. But even with these very odd, contrived metrics, they're still failing 2 out of 3 of them.
Right. And the access to websites includes you're doing research on them.
Yeah, so I'm helping them meet their goals.
Right. So that's very interesting. I mean, they actually measure their success by having 200,000 page views, and they only achieve just over 59,000.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, you get to define what success is for you, and even then, you can't meet it.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, and I hope for a lot of people watching tonight, I mean, what really determines success of public education is actual student scholastic achievements.
Right. And so, what is that achievement looking like?
Oh, it's chart 6.1. You'll see statewide right now we're at 38.5% proficiency in math and 40.4% proficiency in English. So, in other words, the public school system is failing to educate 3 out of every 5 kids in Wisconsin. That's 3 out of 5 kids who can't read at grade level, 3 out of 5 kids who can't do math at grade level. And I probably don't have to tell you, Jim, but it's worse at MPS. It's 15.7% proficiency in reading, 10.5% in math. It comes out to about 5 out of 6 kids at MPS can't read at grade level. 9 out of 10 can't do math at grade level.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
And what you're pointing out here, Bill, is that as money has been increased, and we're seeing record amounts of money being spent, if we go back to that chart here that we just showed here, the 6.1, the proficiency levels are going down.
Yeah.
As more money goes, proficiency goes down.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slight incline. We're rolling downhill. Mm-hmm. And I mean...
And less students.
Yeah, and less students. But I mean, again, in terms of, how does the Department of Public Instruction measure its success? It has nothing to do with scholastic achievements. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised by these results.
But we are surprised.
Yeah, I'm laughing, but it's,
Yeah.
I mean, this is terrifying.
Okay, so if they're in school all these hours and they're not proficient in English, math, and science, what are they learning?
Oh, well, why don't we play that one of those reports I brought in?
Okay. This is a report that you filed on, it's 4th grade, gender instruction, and let's go to the videotape. We'll get an idea of what's being learned.
4th grade teachers in the Eau Claire School District say children's books are a great way to get students thinking about equity and gender identity. Abby Olson is a teacher at Lakeshore Elementary.
What we've found is that finding the really good stories, whether it's because it has a really strong story arc, it's captivating, that the messages that you're hoping to get through to the students, the conversations, the difficult topics, just happen naturally because it's a good story.
Olson says these days teachers have plenty of options.
Instead of having the problem of not having enough books to talk about certain topics, it's almost a problem of I have too many books. And in fact, I've joked with my colleagues that I feel like I'm hoarding books because there's just so many at this point.
Parents across the state have been expressing concern over these types of classroom lessons, which is why Olson recommends the book Red, to introduce children to the idea of gender identity in a more covert way. Red is the story about a blue crayon who has been mislabeled as red.
It's very safe to read, no matter your comfort in talking about equity and identity, because the characters in the book are crayons.
Olson was sharing her teaching strategies at a virtual conference hosted by a University of Wisconsin think tank in October. She explained how picture books like Red are only an entry point. The school is trying to incorporate equity and gender identity into all its subjects.
We're on the journey in the process right now of centering our curriculum basically around thematic units that center around the student's identity, understanding race, understanding community, understanding how to use voices, their own voices.
The state of Wisconsin has not evaluated student achievement since the 2018-2019 school year because of COVID. During that school year, it found that less than half the students at Lakeshore Elementary, where Olson teaches, are proficient in reading and math. 4th graders reading picture books about transgender crayons doesn't seem to be helping. For the MacIver Institute,
I'm Bill Osmolsky.
And Bill Osmolsky is with us here this evening. It's outrageous. I mean, this is fourth grade, and the teacher, when you see her, just gleeful. I've got all these books, more books than I can to indoctrinate my students.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, that's just one report. I mean, the material that we have uncovered over the years, and we aren't the only group doing it. I mean, it's just mountains of stuff. I chose, you know, that one's on Eau Claire School District. We're going to talk about other school districts tonight. So if you think this stuff is just happening in Madison,
or Milwaukee,
you're sadly mistaken.
Right.
So, yeah, what are kids learning in public schools? I mean, a lot of sex. I couldn't share the images. You know, I'm going through some of our old reports, you know, with things blurred out, and even then, they were inappropriate for this program. They are that obscene. They are like, there are students in multiple school districts around the state that are given comic book instructions on how to have gay sex.
And, you know, and what's outrageous about this as well, Bill, is that parents have gone to school board meetings and have read excerpts from these books, very graphic, and oftentimes they're stopped. Don't read that here. You know, and so this is what they're trying to teach our children down in early elementary grades.
Yeah, we got you know, fourth graders and superior taught doctors assign babies sex at birth, but they could be wrong about the gender. Or the state sex ed curriculum explains to fifth graders how to transition genders. Or there's pictures of online of River Falls schools, middle schools, filled with LGBTQ flyers. And then
this is a small River Falls. That's a small community.
Yeah, it is. Rural Wisconsin at that. Slide 7.0. The Elkhorn School District. They're in the news right now because parents this school year, they challenged 444 books, and that was a record, I guess, for Wisconsin. It might have been around the country, but many of those books were pornographic. They this is from a PBS report, and they had like the district superintendent, the principal, saying, yeah, it wasn't just sex, it was drug use and explicit assault and things like that. At the end of the day, all those, and you saw that card, it was
loaded
LGBTQ books just for the high school library. All 444 books are still in the school system because they decided that there was nothing wrong with any of those books.
Aye. We know, too, in cases where they have taken books off a shelf in a library, in whatever case across the country, that there are organizations that are actually mailing teachers directly books in order to add to their LGBT personal collections for the classroom.
Oh, yeah. And you get a lot of like that teacher in the video that that we showed earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, they think this is awesome. They think it's wonderful. But, you know, one of the other big things that they're learning in schools right now is critical race theory, and that's essentially the view that everything is racist and you shouldn't put up with it. And if we could play that video, the Black Lives Matter video, this is a report from Milwaukee from a couple years ago I filed.
Out of the 350 students at Marshall High School in Milwaukee, only one student is proficient in math. None are proficient in English. Although the school has failed to teach them how to think, it's putting plenty of effort into teaching them what to think.
What were they trying to do? Put in the schools? Represent. So we need representation from counselors, not cops, right? Right. So those are the type of things that we discuss in Black Lives Matter.
Despite its 0% proficiency rate, Marshall spent the entire first week in February getting students on board with the Black Lives Matter agenda. Over at James Madison High School, also an MPS, student achievement is just as dismal. It also only has one student who is proficient in math and none in English. Students might not be learning core academic subjects, but they're getting a world-class education in political activism.
We took photos of protests and traced and transferred those to turn them into an illustration. Some students picked that to transfer onto a linoleum block that they then carved. Students learned to carve and print. I think it's important to use linoleum for this project because printmaking and specifically relief carving has a long history as being used for this kind of thing to proliferate ideas and to put social justice causes into that medium.
The entire Milwaukee School District took part in Black Lives Matter Week of Action. Major themes included restorative justice, globalism, collectivism, queerness and transgenderism. Meanwhile, district-wide, only 12% of students are proficient in math and 13% are proficient in English. And state taxpayers sent over $820 million in aid to the district just last year alone. For the McIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
So, Bill, we can't learn how to read and write. We have no proficiency there, but we sure can train students how to raise a fist.
Oh yeah, you know, and there's a lot of overlap here. Obviously, I mean, they're getting into all these, you know, the LGBTQ issues and stuff like that. But there was a professional development session that a lot of these things are online that DPI put on for Madison schools last year, and it was all these teachers talking about how they were being anti-racist in the classroom. That slide 7.2 is just kind of one of the images from their presentation. But I mean, it was things like English grammar, it's racist. Teachers leading the class, it's racist. You should let the students lead. Class schedules, you know, keeping the class on time, that's racist. Being boring is racist. It's just, how can you possibly?
Celebration of President's Day is now racist. Columbus Day is racist. I mean, everything that we've known, even the foundation of our country, we see that as just being total racism.
Absolutely. And I mean, I could go on for a long time, and obviously there's a lot of reports on the website for this.
There is one by the name of Charlene Carruthers.
Oh, yeah.
And she shared as well, kind of like, you know, we're only scratching the surface on this. Let's go to that video.
Yeah, and just real quick, there's Charlene is the woman that's given the professional development. She's with, I think it was University of Chicago. And then the woman to the right, she's a official at Department of Public Instruction. So you can see what the state thinks about what she's saying. Okay.
I'm going to go first to the folks who've been kicking up dust around critical race theory in schools all over the country. How many people did they have to have agree with them or be on board with them for them to cause all this mess? It don't even matter how they define critical race theory. I'm a Black Studies scholar. I think I could tell you what critical race theory is, and I can tell you for sure that it's not the most radical thing to come out of our struggles. I'm like, wait till you hear what we really think, what we really believe in. So whatever.
So what do they really think? What do they really believe in?
We're sure getting a taste of it.
Right,
I think,
right.
You know, if this is just a taste of it, wow. You know, kind of like rolling into one of the other things that they're learning in public schools. I mean, obviously, lots of liberal activism. The state superintendent, one of her top priorities is civics education, which we're kind of seeing, you know, from these videos and reports, you know, what the public education system thinks is it makes up civics education. One year I covered all the times the teachers led their classes on walkouts to protest everything, from climate change to immigration to gun control to racism. I mean, a lot of schools in Milwaukee, this is really popular in Milwaukee, but it's all over the state. Like, there'll be a day where it's like, okay, I'm gonna teach you how to do a street protest, and they'll lead the, you know, kindergartners out, march around the block to say no to bullying or, you know, no to climate change. You name it. There's been teachers arrested at these things. Like there was here in Milwaukee, there was a teacher that led her students downtown for a climate change protest. She did a sit-in at a bank, and they arrested her in front of her students. Yeah, no repercussions for stuff like that. One of the most disturbing ones was in Madison after Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I've got that video here tonight too. And it was this is Madison East High School.
And you've got Madison East there, but you've got a state legislator that is coaching the students.
That's right. So yeah, this is an abortion rally for high school students.
Let's go to the video.
Madison East High School students are furious that Roe versus Wade could soon be overturned.
We will not stop protesting until we have free, safe, legal, and accessible abortion.
A couple hundred high school students protested at the Wisconsin Capitol on Friday afternoon.
Whose body? Our body. Whose choice?
Senator Melissa Agard had lots of encouraging words for the youngsters.
Abortion is health care. No politician,
no Supreme Court justice, no one has the right to say what you and I do with our reproductive rights.
She told the high schoolers that everyone should have access to birth control and abortion pills.
If we wanted to decrease the amount of abortions in Wisconsin, we would be making sure that everyone had access to birth control. If we wanted to decrease abortions in Wisconsin, we would make sure that everyone has access to Plan B. Is that the case?
The students say they have a plan of action to keep fighting for abortion in Wisconsin.
We're going to keep donating to abortion funds, we're going to drive our friends out of state, and we're going to keep showing up!
More pro-abortion rallies are planned at the Wisconsin Capitol throughout the weekend. For the McIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
Again, Bill, we can't read, we can't write, we can't do simple math skills, we can't function in society, but yet, you know, just the indoctrination that is going on through abortion rallies like this, the BLM, the LGBT, it's just really off the charts.
Oh, yeah, the last one, I mean, I would call that grooming. I mean, those students didn't come up with that idea themselves. That was hatched at Madison East High School. And you're talking to minors about getting on birth control so that, you know, they can have more unprotected sex. I mean, it just, yeah.
Friends who are listening to Watching in Focus tonight, Bill Osmolsky is with us from the McIver Institute and just exposing this. And we hope that this is just painting a picture of as things really are across the state. And yet what we're talking about is a microcosm of what's taking place. Things are so much worse. There's so much we cannot show and share as to what really is taking place.
Yeah, like you mentioned all the teachers that, or all the parents that were reading from their kids' textbooks at the school board meetings. I got that video. I reviewed it before I came on the show. We can't show that. It's completely obscene. You know, some of the other things with, you know, the LGBTQ culture wars, as I put it, you know, just here around Wisconsin. You know, over the past year, we had a first grade teacher in Waukesha try to get our students to sing a song about LGBTQ and inclusivity. We had the Department of Education ordered all students at Rhinelander to go through sexual harassment training because they were using the wrong pronouns for a transgender student. Eau Claire had a student assembly for elementary through high school students so a teacher could come out as transgender. You've got boys and girls bathrooms, you know, and this happens all over, but, you know, the ones that made the news, Mukwanago and Sun Prairie was the one where you had the 18-year-old boy come into the girls' shower room. 3 freshman girls were there. He strips down, takes a shower, says, oh, by the way, I'm transgender. You got boys and girls sports, which, you know, Governor Evers vetoed a bill that would have prevented it in Wisconsin, but that's a moot point.
Yeah, and we're decimating girls' sports as a result of that.
Yeah, and that's a moot point because U.S. Department of Education just changed Title IX.
Right.
You know, Title IX was meant to essentially created women's sports. It prevented sexual discrimination against girls in any institution that collects public money. They expanded the definition of sexual discrimination against girls to include transgenders. So it pretty much means nothing anymore.
Well, again, that just really unfolded last week from Department of Public Instruction, mandate from the Biden administration in that regard. And again, I'm confident this is going to be challenged up to the Supreme Court, but how much damage is done in the meantime? Yeah,
exactly. And, you know, moving on to, you know, beyond sex and activism and all that, our schools are not safe. And I'm not talking about school shootings, you know, just day to day, the hallways in your kids' schools, if they go to public school, they aren't safe. If you want to roll that clip of news reports from around Wisconsin, just pretty much from the past year.
This video recorded off the phone of Kathy McBride, Gabriel's mother. She says the attack put Gabriel in the hospital.
Chelsea Geeson says she's the mother of the student who was most recently attacked at the Shawano Community Middle School.
Immediately broke down into tears, and it still affects me. And I'm sure it really affects my son too, because, you know, like I don't even feel like I can let him go to the park.
This is a video from Wauwatosa West High School last September.
Swung around, pummeled, and thrown to the ground.
Stomping on my daughter's stomach, stomping on my daughter's face.
Candace Coffert says cell phone video shows her 3 daughters, ages 12, 13, and 14, were jumped in the bathroom.
You can see an officer is going to step in here to stop the fight and put a 12-year-old in handcuffs.
So, Bill, what we're seeing here is the fighting that is breaking out, the schools, the bullying, everything else that is going on.
Yeah, this is happening all over. I mean, these are just the ones that, this is just a sample. This is just the stuff that made the news. That kids, were actually rolling on and, got that much attention online. But, most fights are not videotaped. They're not covered in the news. And I can say this because there was a survey that Madison School District had last year that found that literally hundreds of students do not feel safe anywhere in their school because of the violence. And they can also complain about rampant drug use and sex in the bathrooms. So these are not safe environments. We just had a few months ago in West Bend, there were 5 kids were arrested were arrested a few months ago. 3 of them had to go to the hospital over one of these fights. That you had that boy that was beat up in Waukesha. You had that other boy that was punched in the face. That was just an autistic boy. That was Shawano. That was just a suburb.
Right.
And he's just sitting there in class, and kids are just walking up, punching him in the face. These are not isolated incidents. Is the point.
And at the same time, we lessen the value of police officers throughout the state. We had the defund the police movement, take place, and many schools have stopped the resource officers from being available. Some are calling them back now, saying, "Hey, things are getting too out of control here." But we're really a huge mess.
Yeah. In fact, that one in that one clip from Kenosha, where the officer arrested that 12-year-old. Yeah, he was a little bit too rough, so they fired him. So why would you want to be a school resource officer?
Right. Why do we tolerate this?
Education, it's very controversial, but it's a sacred cow, obviously. It feels like everybody always wants to say they support public education. And, I don't think there's any one reason. I think, different stakeholder groups have different reasons on why they support education. And, let's start with the educators. I think it's human nature. It's very tough to admit when you're failing at something, especially when it's your entire career. And let's be honest, they got jobs with very generous pay and benefits. They got summers off. They've got a lot at stake there. You want to talk about the liberal activists? You saw in some of my reports there. This is a great way to indoctrinate the next generation. They're very successful at it. It's also, for other liberals, public schools are reliable sources of employment. The public schools themselves, they'll support all this stuff. The smallest communities in the state, some of the radical things that are getting pushed through those schools, none of the administrators think that anything's wrong with it. Public schools, it's a vehicle to promote these beliefs throughout virtually every community in the state. There is no corner of Wisconsin that is not in a public school district. So this stuff that's how you spread this stuff. Democrats, hey, they know. Educators are reliable Democrat voters. There was a national survey a couple years ago. 97% of English teachers are Democrats. 87% of math teachers are Democrats. So you've got a solid voting bloc. You want to take care of them. You want to give them as much money as possible. You want to support them any way you can. You want to protect those public schools. And the public schools, you get Democrats and liberals indoctrinating the young kids. You're producing more Democrat voters. I already mentioned, this public school system provides them access to these smaller rural communities. You'll see like the smallest town, like these really small cities in various corners of the state. The entire county will be red, but that little community, that city, that's a solid blue. Trust me, you got a lot of public school employees that are producing that shade of blue. Now, Republicans. I said earlier in the show, an historic increase in public school funding. They love saying that. Every state budget, they gave more money to public schools than the state has ever given to public schools before. Well, they realize that at the end of the day, most of the voters in their district are either educators, they either are involved in the public school system or they're parents of public school students. So that's why they consider it a sacred cow that I got to support the schools or they're going to vote me out. Taxpayers, we talked about what's the purpose of public education. I think a lot of taxpayers, there's naivety, in all these stakeholder groups, but I mean, they believe that the public schools produce educated citizens and there's no other way to do it. But there's another thing too, like when you start talking about closing high schools and stuff, you'll see that public schools have been very successful at embedding themselves in our communities to the point where most people find they cannot separate their public school system, district, from their community. It's one and the same to them. So that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And then finally, let's talk about the parents. It's hard to say, but let's face it. For a lot of people, the schools are free daycare. Daycare. Everybody it's free daycare.
Free breakfast and
free
lunch.
Yeah, I mean, you got somebody else taking care of your kids at least 8 hours out of the day that you are not. That's not coming out of your pocket. And so on the other flip side of that, they don't want to pay for private school. They don't want to spend the money to send them to private school. They don't want to spend the time to homeschool them. Organized sports, that's another one. The government, boys and girls sports. I don't know why that's such a big one anymore for parents of female students, but yeah, I mean our kids got to be in sports. That's really important. But at the end of the day, I would say this: if you put your kids in public schools, I'm not saying you don't care about your kids. I'm just saying that there's something more important in your life than their education, their safety, and their well-being.
Wow.
There you have it.
That's strong words. So what can be done? I mean, we know that there are those who are choosing alternative forms of education. There is a massive homeschool association here in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You got to pull your kids out of these public schools. I mean, I know a lot of people. So there's one other thing for the parents why they have their kids in the public schools. Not why they don't support the public schools, but they got their kids in there because, we need to change them. We can't give up. You aren't going to change them. You can get a couple of your friends elected to the school board. Nothing's going to change. We're on a Christian program, so this is a good example. For years I went to the church in my town, and it was progressive, a lot of sacrileges. And my wife and I were like, oh, we got to stay here. We got to be the positive, Christian examples here of, and try to change it. Finally, we were pulled aside by, somebody, a lot more faithful than the pastor of our church, pastor of another church. He says, we're explaining our problem. He says, leave. You're never going to change it. You got to leave. He was absolutely right. We left. We haven't been happier. So, same thing goes for schools. And then the other thing too with that is, you've seen the videos tonight. These schools are cesspools. They're violent. They're dangerous. They're battlefields. Are you going to send your child on a battlefield to fight this battle for your ideological beliefs?
Multiple hours a day.
That's right. Pull them out.
Bill Osmulski with us here tonight. Friends, I'd like to open the phone lines and take your questions. We have more that we'll discuss here, but if you have a question you'd like to ask or a brief comment, our phone number is 414-935-3030. 414-935-3030. Toll free, our number 800-733-8830. Are the videos such that impacted you, your way of thinking? Did you understand what is happening within the public education system? Or if you'd like to text in your comment tonight or your question, you can text by phone. You can put in your first name and the city that you're texting from to 414-439-3585. That's 414-439-3585. Are people pulling their kids out of schools?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned the Christian Homeschool Education Network. That's a great organization. I mean, these kids get socialized. They get to interact with other homeschool kids. It's not like your kid is just going to be sitting in your basement reading books by himself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is such a great organization with great resources.
I just mentioned they just had their convention in the Dells. 3,500 people out for this convention.
And, you know, a lot of people participate in the school choice program, which has income limits, income limits. But private schools aren't as expensive as you think. Shop around. I know a family that goes to, say, has 3 kids in the private school in our church, $3,500 a year. I mean, there's scholarships. Churches run these schools to get kids out of the public school system. They are not profit centers, trust me.
Yeah. Let's go to the phone lines. And again, Bill Osmolsky is with us tonight, and we will be putting up some contact information for him before the program is over and for the MacIver Institute. But let's pick up Kelly in Mayville. Hi, Kelly, you're on the air.
Hi, I'd just like to comment. I'd like to say that I think we're having the problems because the Bible says it's up to parents to teach their kids the Word of God, and if they would be doing that, we wouldn't have these problems, I don't think, and that's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Parents' involvement is critical.
It is, and I mean, if you ask a teacher, why, you know, you've got these kids for 40 hours a week, why can't you teach these second graders how to read? They'll tell you, well, because the parents aren't involved. So, you know, for anyone that doesn't want to homeschool, just so you know, I mean, the public schools expect you to homeschool anyway.
Right. And I know families that do homeschool and those even that in private schools, children are reading by kindergarten. They're reading in kindergarten. They go through phonics and learn the sounds and able to put the words together.
That's right. I mean, when you send them to a school that actually cares about scholastic achievement and not any of this other, you know, social programming, you get the results you want.
Our number 414-935-3030 or 800-733-8830, or text in your first name, the city you're texting from, 414-439-3585. Bill, this is Anna from Milwaukee.
Okay.
And Anna says that video was so hard to watch. With all the racial division going on, do you think it's safe for white kids to go to MPS? I wouldn't send my children into that environment where kids are taught to hate being white and BLM stuff. It's sad where we are at. We are going backwards.
I would say that MPS isn't safe for any kid. So, yeah, I mean, again, pull your kids out. If your kids go to MPS, I mean, that's the environment that you're putting them in. They aren't learning how to be productive members of society. They aren't learning any positive social skills. You know, it's just fomenting, division,
social protests.
I mean, you aren't even going to get happy kids out of it. You're just going to get angry, uneducated kids out of a system like that.
Yeah. And so we get to the point where we have parents who are then having to, see their kids on the news committing some kind of crime, having to call the police to turn in their own children or grandchildren.
And, talk about MPS, but, one of those videos in that fights montage, you saw the one where everyone was out on the street. That was Madison East High School. That was in Madison. It's like the whole high school just burst out onto the street. You saw, about at least a dozen cops trying to keep it under control.
We also see the violence against teachers themselves.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, there's been some really brutal ones, and I'm sure some of your viewers have seen them. I mean, on social media, where like kids just beating teachers within an inch of their life, and other teachers standing around not doing anything about it too.
Yeah, filming it.
Yeah.
Friends, we've got some open lines. Your thoughts on these issues? 414-935-3030, 800-733-8830. Or text in first name, city, and to 414-439-3585. This is going on each and every day.
Oh, yeah. And Jim, I just, I've been on the show before. We've gotten a lot of callers before. I told you this is a sacred cow, and we're going after it. And I think people might be a little nervous, or else they're in shock from, a lot of the material we covered tonight. And I know pulling your kids out of public school isn't the only thing that you can do. You aren't going to pressure your school districts to do the right thing. I think this comes down to you need to start pressuring your lawmakers to do the right thing. Let them know that, hey, public education is really controversial. We don't think it's the right thing. It's failing our communities. It's failing our schools, and we want to see some real oversight. Let's start holding their feet to the fire, and you can start with MPS, or DPI not having actual metrics to measure student success.
Right, right. And again, when we show the BLM instruction and so forth, and you're pointing out only one student in the entire school is proficient.
Yeah, but you just voted to give them another $250 million.
Yeah. It's rather outrageous. Let's go back to the phone lines here. We have David calling from Milwaukee. Hi, David. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call, Jim. It's been a time since I've called in. But I'd just like to say, Timothy says, "And thou from a child has known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make wise unto salvation through faith in our Lord Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
The best is to homeschool and put them in a godly gospel school. And also phonics is not being taught in the schools, which phonics is the only true way to learn to read.
Yeah.
That was the way that the New England
primer
was based on, and that was pulled out to schools, and they don't even know about phonics. The teachers at the colleges are just being taught whole language.
Yeah. Thank you for that, David.
I love you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks for the show tonight.
Thank you for watching. And so if we can keep students dumbed down, it's easier to control them, is it not?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you saw that one video, the Black Lives Matter video at MPS. Those kids had no idea. They were just, they had no idea what the teachers were trying to tell them to do. It was just, tell me the answers and I'll go with it.
We've got Diane in Wauwatosa calling. Diane, you're on the air.
Yes, a couple of thoughts. I was a volunteer in the MPS system. I can mention the school, South Division, and I was under basics, Brothers and Sisters in Christ service, and we were asked to come in there, and there's other schools too. So the reason I'm mentioning that is I think it's a good idea that, and I hope others are listening, that church bodies get involved in volunteering, especially, and I say especially fathers. And I don't want to hear the excuse, I've got to work. If you gather up several fathers, a group, and you plan it, you can manage it. I managed it when I was working also, but they need fathers in there, especially, I'm going to say, ones that are want to be involved in making a difference in the schools.
Diane, thank you. I'm going to have our guest comment on that issue. Thank you.
Yeah, Diane, thank you for that. I didn't have that on my list, but yeah, that is something that you could do as well. And in fact, I do know of a pro-life group in the Madison area, and they actually get permission once a year to stand in the parking lot outside the school and hand out bags of literature on why you should be pro-life.
And, you know, there's a group called Child Evangelism Fellowship that is going in and holding good news clubs in the schools. And a number of school students in schools all throughout greater Milwaukee area, southeast Wisconsin, engaged in that. Got a number of texts coming in here. So this is from Sandy in Milwaukee. Hi, Bill. I lost track of the push to have MPS controlled by another entity like the legislature. Could you tell me if you think this would be beneficial?
You know, there's been a lot of different proposals over the years, heavily opposed by all the representatives from Milwaukee, which hobbles them right out of the gates. Yeah, and it seems like even the... I
know there are others, like former Representative Dale Coingle, for instance, and wanting to break up the system and have some solutions to bring about...
And, you know, the counter-argument to that is, okay, now you got five expensive problems instead of one, and... I mean, there's no easy answer here.
Yeah, but parental involvement and engagement and understanding what is going on in the classroom.
School choice has really changed a lot of kids' lives in this city too.
Yeah.
There's geez, I can't even remember the name of it right now, but there's a school on the east side. It was run by a Capuchin monk. And it was, you know, one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. And you saw the kids that were attending that school all in uniforms, all really bright-eyed, just so polite and eager to learn. And it's like, these are the same kids that are going to the MPS schools. It's the kids aren't the problem. It's the system is the problem. You put them in the right environment, the right educational environment, and yeah, you're going to see their potential.
And we want to be careful, too. We're not painting with a broad brush every teacher that's out there, because there are teachers who are trying to make a difference. This is a text from Rick in Lake Geneva. What solution is there in the school when teachers are the scapegoat?
Yeah. So you're saying that, I don't quite understand the question.
I guess they're...
So teachers whose job it is to educate these kids, they have them in their classroom for 40 hours a week, still can't figure out how to teach these kids how to, you know, just the basic grade proficiency level stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of fingers to blame, but I mean, you're on the front lines. I mean, that's where the job gets done. So, I mean, sorry.
We also have Marie from Grafton, and said, asked Bill why he thinks more parents or guardians don't take advantage of the vouchers or.
So, I mean, there are income limits to the vouchers, and there's, you know, only so many students can be in the in that system as well.
That's so true for Milwaukee, though, and Racine. Are those more open than the rest of the state?
It's choice is statewide now.
Okay.
But I mean, it's, you know, not everybody can get in the program. I mean, don't write off private school because you can't get in the choice program. Private school is not necessarily as expensive as you think it is. There are scholarships available. I mean, like I was saying before, when a church has a school, that is not a profit center. They are running that school. If you ask your pastor, why do you have this school that is costing us money? It is a priority because they are saving kids from the public school system. And, you know, my church, the church I go to in Janesville, you know, it has 4 schools in Janesville. They, look, they don't turn kids away. There's kids whose parents, you know, their parents are giving $1,000 a year for tuition. They'll make it happen. They want to help you. And homeschooling's another one too. Like I said, I mean, even if you send your kid to public school, these teachers still expect you to teach the kids, you know, in the evenings, because obviously they can't do it in 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't discount homeschooling. The Christian Homeschooling Education Network, excellent resource. They've got tons of resources to help families. Talk to your church. Your church you probably have homeschooling families at your church. These kids are not isolated. They're among really wonderful, amazing kids, you know, their own age, you know.
Bill, we're going to have to leave it there here tonight. Thanks for being with us. Let's put up some contact information, though, for the McIver Institute. Bill files a number of stories here and articles. Research McIverInstitute.com, McIverInstitute.com. On Twitter, it's McIverWhisk. And then also email. Yeah,
so that email address, I see it's a little incomplete. It should be at McIverInstitute, all one word, .com, just like the website.
At McIverInstitute.com. Bill, thanks for being with us here tonight.
Thank you, Jim.
And friends, thanks for joining us here on the program In Focus, keeping you informed on these critical issues. Good night.